controversial. I think that is probably one of the biggest compliments that I can get, as my job here is to interrogate movies for their plot and content. Welcome back to Movie Deputy Reviews, where once again you are getting the one, the only movie deputy, the one who interrogates movies for their plot and their content. Are you ready for today? I sure hope so, because I know I am. The one we are talking about today, it's going to be an innocent rating because there's nothing really that out of the world, over the top, content-wise or anything. And of course, the language is still within that borderline safe barrier for that as well. But today we are going to be talking about a Marvel movie. Now, this one's been out for a little bit, so I'm a little bit behind on that one. My apologies. But today we are talking about the new Captain America, Brave New World. Now, you may be super excited about that, and I kind of hope so, because I know I am. With this one, I just want to temper you a little bit, because I want to preface this review before I even get started that I like Sam Wilson. I think he is a good, that the whole role of Captain America is good for him in stepping into that and everything from the Falcon, and how he is combining these roles into one I think works, at least for the storyline and kind of how they're continuing the whole Captain America thing after everything with Steve Rogers and all of that. So if you're not familiar with that, I would advise going back and watching the Captain America movies. Now, you're probably curious onto the score of which I'm giving this. Now, I want to, again, temper that a little bit as well, because it's not going to be what you expect. Now, I don't know if based on your personal feelings, if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I tried to stay really true to the deputy scale, which is my own creation. And part of that means assigning scores to certain movies that I wouldn't necessarily personally assign to them. And this is one of those movies. Now, score-wise, I'm going to get to that probably around the middle of the review, because I don't want to give that away and have you go, oh, yay or nay, right off the bat. So I want you to stick around a little bit for this. Now, with this Captain America, obviously the role has changed hands, because it was Steve Rogers, now Sam Wilson. And the Avengers have basically been disbanded, and Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross has always been a big opponent of the Avengers, and he's been very vocal about that he thinks that they're a problem with society, only now he's the president. Now, you can imagine that is going to be met with some skepticism by even people close to him. And that's really what we see here is he's been anti-Avengers and basically all these superheroes. And so now he's needing Captain America to stand with him and to help him fight to control adamantium. Now you may be going, wait, but we're getting there. That's kind of a big plot hole somewhat in this. Is supposedly this is the first discovery of adamantium. I know the whole thing with Wolverine and everything, trust me, I know. But in this movie, they're pretending like they've never even heard of adamantium before. And they're just talking about like this new material, and it's this, that, and the other thing, and it's all these fantastic things. And anybody paying attention to the Marvel Universe knows that that is not the case. But why they went that direction with this movie, we're just going to be left wondering for a while, because it never does answer that. But here, Sam Wilson and Captain America, they have to protect Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. They have to protect him, because there is an attempted assassination plot. Now, okay, does that hit a little bit too close to home with some stuff that's happened in the last year? Maybe a little bit, but the movie, I'm surprised that it was not more woke than it was. There were a few comments and a few things that, okay, it's Hollywood. They could help them. They could help themselves if they really wanted to. But I mean, this is Disney. This is Hollywood. This is Marvel. So yeah, they're gonna squeeze some of that stuff in there. But in this, Captain America decides to, at the invitation of the president, come to this big show thing that they're doing to introduce adamantium, and he's been invited to bring along a friend of his as well, or not directly. It's like he says, "Okay, I'll come, but I'll bring my buddy too." And they're like, "Okay, that's fine. Only this buddy also has a long-standing conundrum of sorts with some of the other people that are going to be there." And so as everything starts to unfold, everything just goes into absolute pandemonium, and you've got nation against nation, and you've got superhero against superhero. And of course, you've got Thaddeus, who thinks that he's found a way around some of this stuff. And okay, so it begins to look like he is the bad guy here. So is that the case, or is there more to it? Well, I won't give away who the bad guy is, but I will say that there's more to this than what there seems. Now, Thaddeus Ross, that name may sound familiar to you, and if you are at all familiar with the stories of the Hulk or Bruce Banner, you will recognize the name Betty Ross. And that is because she was Bruce Banner's girlfriend. Well, she's the president's daughter. And do we get to see her in this one? That I'm not going to completely spoil that for you either. She's referenced a lot, but whether or not we see her, you're going to have to check out the movie to find out. Now, those like I said, familiar with the movies may be familiar with like the typical how things play out between government officials and the superheroes. Well, again, that's not going to play out in the typical way, and it's both undoes some of the stuff that's happened in the past. It touches on some stuff that happened with Wakanda. It touches on a bunch of things that are happening with some of the other superheroes, specifically Banner and some other ones. And it just, you've got this giant like alien thing, which almost feels something like the movie Arrival. You've got these different nations trying to work into accords and trying to figure out how to basically keep everything going forward. It touches on the black sites and stuff that the governments have around the world and why people are there and how to keep them there or how to help them escape. Both. It touches on a lot of that stuff. But in doing all of that, there's really not much to the story. Even with as much as happening, it's weak. It doesn't feel like our typical Marvel superhero movies. It felt like they were trying to take 30 minutes of content and stretch it into 2+ hours of movie that just kind of leave you wondering, okay, this could have been a TV episode, basically, and told basically everything that they needed to tell. Now, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, you've probably seen some of the trailers for this movie. You've probably seen the posters of the Red Hulk. Well, that is not a spoiler, so don't worry for that. But Thaddeus Ross, he becomes the Red Hulk. Now, how does he become the Red Hulk? That has to do with who the real bad guy is here. Now, once that gets resolved, that's really the only highlight to the story is seeing how that plays out and how basically the bad guy plays into everything that's happening in this movie. But it's just so overly stretched out and just overly done, and yet it underperforms. So you're probably wondering score-wise where I'm at. And I know this has been my week of controversial because that's probably the word I'm seeing the most in at least some of the last couple messages I've gotten. But this is going to be another controversial score, so don't worry. I mean, I'm not going to disappoint you there. But I am giving Captain America Brave New World only a 4.5 out of 10 on the deputy scale. Now, why? That is because, honestly, a lot of this movie is forgettable. You're going to remember the fight scenes. You're going to remember a few of the things of that. But there's not a lot to the actual story that's going to... This is not a movie that people are going to be talking about over and over again. This is going to be one of those movies that you watch it and okay, you're glad you watch it, but somebody asks you a couple weeks from now and they're like, did you watch that movie? You're like, I think so. Or yeah, I saw that. And they're like, what is about the Red Hulk and Captain America? Which, guess what? You can figure that out just by looking at the posters and everything. So that's not going to really tell you a whole lot. Now, this tries to connect a little bit with kind of the reinstatement of the government and the Avengers working together. So that was a little something, but they didn't touch on that enough. So this one is available now on Disney Plus if you have that. If you don't have that, it's probably at least worth, I mean, if you're curious about it, it's worth signing up for the free trial. If you're not curious about it, you're not missing much, unfortunately. So once again, I hope that this will help at least a few people out. If you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. I don't expect 100% of people to agree with me 100% of the time, or the world would be pretty boring. So as always, please like, subscribe, and share for the latest and greatest Movie Deputy content. And I will be back this weekend with some new ones for you. Bye-bye.